No, I was just saying, man, too often, man, we pull our eyes and we get distracted. And because we are distracted, man, it affects how we struggle. Like, one, if we're struggling, we try to bury it rather than embrace it, because the idea of struggling means we're doing something wrong, opposed to going, you know what, life is a struggle. Does the Lord want to teach us something in and through this?
Let's give kind of a little glossary or an index, a vocabulary index of what we're dealing with here. So we got Sean Moore. Sean, tell me just a little bit about yourself, the flyover version of the important parts. Obviously married, wife's name, kids, ages, if whatever you want to give that doesn't need to be too personal if you don't want people to be stalking you and all that fun stuff. But and then kind of give me what you would currently say is your role without giving too much, if you don't want to get into that with your position there in Haiti right now.
Yeah, for sure. Man, first and foremost, follower of Jesus.
Yes.
You know, he's the way, and we just wake up every day and try to figure out what his steps look like and what that means for our life here in North Central Texas and around the world. So got my wife, Jen. Oh, man, you put me on the spot here. High school sweethearts. Yeah. So, man, 20 plus years together. 17 plus years on marriage, I think. Catch me slipping on that one. 4 kiddos, freshmen, 2 4th graders, and a 2-year-old, 2 bio, 2 adopted.
I forget you have a 2-year-old, bro. You got a little munchkin in the mix. I knew that you had a young one. I just didn't. I guess I never think that you have a 2-year-old. You just we basically
we start literally starting over.
Yeah, right.
And everybody's like, man, your kids are so far apart. What are you doing? And we're like, dude, we joke that we planned it. Obviously we did not, but right. we got a stud 15-year-old built-in babysitter that's loves his little bro. Then when the 2 middle ones get up, man, we're still covered. So, we're super blessed to have some really rad kids. And it's crazy. We were just talking the other day, it's crazy that 3 of our kids have experienced life in Haiti and in the church as, pastors' kids and things like that. And that our little dude will have a totally different experience. And so it's just even thinking about that, Lord, what do you have in store for him? That is he's going to be trained up in a different way just because his life experience is different.
Right. So what do you do? North Central Texas, what are you up to these days?
Man, we've been super blessed when we decide to make the transition out of Florida post Haiti and just kind of come back to Texas. I don't know, man. I'm not from Texas, but everybody jokes, I got here as fast as I could type thing. So just really, really, really love it here and just decide to come back and be kind of open-handed in what we're doing. And so thankfully, man, we've got some great family opportunity to kind of do some side gig work and really leave our hands open-handed to what the Lord has for us. So dipping my toes in the water in Haiti and in some other countries in regards to some side work, doing that and ministry and exploring that, and really just post-COVID trying to get back into the local church scene and be able to not necessarily looking to be on staff or do anything like that. Just say, hey, the church is the body of the Lord, and how can we serve that? And because we're able to work and kind of pull income from some different places, gives us some flexibility to do some things that other families can't.
Right on. Yeah. When I think of you, Sean, and, we could probably make this a segment for its own day, but people oftentimes ask, there's kind of a conventional, I don't even think there is a conventional way anymore, but there used to be a conventional way for guys like us. It's like high school, college, career. And somehow, some way, some of us meet Jesus in the middle of all that. And we just realize that first and foremost, we need to be a follower. I used to do a message all the time, and I try to keep 3 questions that Jesus asked his disciples in check. And that is, what do you seek? Who do you say that I am? And do you love me more than these? And the idea around those questions is constantly asking myself, is Jesus Lord of my life? Am I in a position where I'm truly following him, and in following him, do I trust that he's going to lead me, to the place I want to be? Because in and of myself, I could end up anywhere. I could be doing whatever I want to be doing. Well, maybe, but you know what I'm saying? And when I think of you, I think of a follower of Christ. And a guy once said to me, he says, you can make a decision. Your life can look good on paper or it can look good off paper. For those that your life doesn't look great on paper, doesn't mean that your life wasn't successful or amazing. And that kind of gets to be a weird, we deal with that as men, but I know when I think of you and I think of myself, we're going to want to err on the side of, did we follow Jesus? Did we seek out what it was his purpose was for us and feel that we allowed him to fulfill that in our life? So I'm proud of you, man. I'm super excited for you.
Appreciate that,
God's
man.
doing some big things in your life. For today, man, I would love to even just hear your story a little bit. You and I met kind of as you were exiting Haiti your first time around. And we can get into all that, but what got you to Haiti? Like what were your days like before I met you? How did you get there? As far as like Haiti, the experience, and then also even spiritually, what was going on in yours and your wife's life that made sense for you guys to uproot and go take a spot in Haiti?
Man, I grew up in the church. Great parents, man. Really, growing up led us in the way of the Lord. And like any young person, you got to figure that out for yourself till it sits in, right? Jen and I were married, in college, got out, you get a job, you get a dog, and, you go for neighborhood walks and sign your kid up for T-ball and do all these things that are just like, quote unquote, the American dream and what everybody else around you is doing. And man, it's I love telling this story because it's really funny how the Lord works. And so, man, I'm doing the American dream and working construction and got a good job and actually felt like I was doing a good job at it, even for being a young guy in a new industry and things like that. And we started going to church and had a friend that actually owned a gym and said, "Hey, man, we're going to start a new, before CrossFit was CrossFit and super cool, hey man, let's get a group of us together and do this." And so, hey, let's do that. And, oh, by the way, the pastor from our church is going to be in this group. Cool, man. I'm young and in shape and not round at the time. And so, man, we just jump in. Now. Oh, I'm round. And so we did that. And it was a huge part of our community of just like, man, every day after work and our kids and just like, it was a community for us. But the whole time I always joke, man, our pastor was discipling us. We had no idea.
Sure. Yeah.
Like we just thought we were working out. And then he'd be like, "Hey man, one night after workout, let's get together and go through a book or, do something like that." Well, play it out 10 plus years later. I'm like, oh dude, he was discipling us the whole time and we had no idea. Right. Because he was just being relational with his life and using the spots for which we're put in to leverage those things. Right.
Yeah.
So man, play that out, a year or two. We've just been in a really tight community and doing this and really growing, but not even recognizing at the time.
Yeah.
January 2010 happens and, Haiti's hit with the earthquake. To be honest with you, didn't know anything about it. I'm not that smart. I probably couldn't even told you where Haiti was.
Same boat. Yep.
And so, we're at workout one day and, he's like, "Hey man, did you hear about this earthquake?" He was like, some pastors from all over the States are getting together. We're going down to Haiti in a few weeks. I'm excited to tell you about when I get back. Cool. He goes, "Don't anything about it. Go about life." He comes back, man. And it's weird. I can even take you to the spot where we were talking that day. And he said, "Hey man, I'm really excited. There's a really large group of churches getting together and we're going to do some good work over the coming months in Haiti. I really want you to consider going." Cool. Thanks. Great. Sounds awesome. Played out a few months. Got a dude that I just kind of met through this workout clan, texts me on a Sunday night and says, "Hey man, I signed us up to go to Haiti."
All right.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. Off to Haiti we go. To be honest with you, I don't even think I paid for it. Like, the money came in, didn't have an ounce of reservation, probably not an ounce of prayer. Just like, hey, apparently these people are in a bind. A little bit of that white savior mentality of like, man, off we go on our white horse to save the day. Mm-hmm. And before I knew it, I'm in Haiti. And man, I just think back about all my time in Haiti and just how the Lord used it. And during that first trip, man, for probably, let's just say it was 7 days, probably 4 or 5 days of that were utter frustration.
Sure. Tell me about it. So talk me through even like just coming off the plane, right? I mean, you're flying over. So what's your overseas experience at this point? 2010?
Zero.
So this is your first exposure to third world, fourth world type countries. So you're coming in on that plane hot. Walk me even through some of that. What's happening?
So you remember Haiti post earthquake, man? Like you get off, you land on the land on the runway, walk out on the runway, either walk to passport control. It was just a big shed, and you hoped in your God you found your luggage, man. It was just literally, it was coming through a cutout hole in the wall of tin. Remember, it was like, they literally had to slap together like tin roof, and there was a dude throwing your bags through the hole.
Yeah. All right. So anyways, take me through that. Yeah, man. Take me through that. What's going on in your mind? All that fun stuff.
Dude, it was super cool because I'm all about experiences. And so for me, good or bad, I'm going to take it in. And so I'm just like wide-eyed, man, this is super rad. Like, I can't believe I'm here. Walk in, man. I'm like, I get to get my passport stamped. I don't even know what that is. Do that. Yep. And then literally walk in, and I swear, man, it looked like the size of a swimming pool full of luggage mountain.
Yep.
And you dig through, find your stuff. And so we were the first group of a group of groups that were going. So we were kind of the guinea pigs, right?
Okay.
So we got a whole bunch of dudes. Some were some good friends, even my brother-in-law and some guys from church. And we dig through this mountain of luggage, grab our bags, and off we go to exit. I'll never forget, there's a guy there. I think he was a U.S. military guy at the time. And he says, "Hey, once you guys leave, you're on your own." And it's kind of like you see in movies how remember it was super dark in that shed and really balmy. And as you're walking towards the exit, there's no cover. So it's like you're walking into the light and you really can't see. So you walk through that hole and you step into a cage, like you're in like WWE or F or whatever it was when we were kids. And it's the cage match, right? And so we step into the cage and literally there's people climbing the walls from floor to ceiling, like shaking it. And it's not a fearful thing. It's just like, that's life. Right.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. The dude we were with, still friends to this day. Like I look around and you see the guys in the group who are controlling type A, like I'm going to take control of this. And you just see their face clench up. And it's like, hey, I'm not in control anymore. And I don't say this to toot my own horn, but I'm just like the opposite and going, this is really cool. I have no idea what to expect. And I'm not sure this is the best idea, but we're going to do this.
Yeah, same.
And so that was
the same type of mentality. Yeah.
And so for me, it was just like, man, I remember just the people shaking the fence and just like being wide-eyed going, what is going on here?
Yeah, give our audience a little bit. You and I, like I said, we're very acquainted with Haiti. We're kind of taking them down memory lane. So earthquake happened in January. What months are you when are you arriving and what's the scene? Right. So a lot of people don't even know. I'll steal some of your thunder. Right. So I think it's around 7 or 8 square miles is the epicenter of this earthquake. Inside this epicenter is better than 300 to 400,000 deceased, right? Mm-hmm. In a matter of an instant and over the course of the next few days between the collapsed buildings, Haiti lost 300 to 400,000 people. That's lives. That's not injuries. That's not people that had an arm crushed, a leg crushed. I mean, you and I, we're going there years later, and the people on crutches, wheelchairs, so on and so forth. So anyways, take us through that moment. So you're coming out and you're describing.
Yeah, man, we're probably,
what seems to be
I think it's
scary
May.
And chaotic. Yeah. All right. So
I mean, we're talking May. So we're
nothing. What,
yeah.
Nothing's
4 months
nothing's
out.
really that changed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, we get out and, just to have that first, international experience coming into Haiti at such a chaotic time, you would really expect to have fear, anxiety, just like, oh man, deer in headlights. Yet I was deer in headlights going, this is really cool. I probably couldn't put those words to it at the time, but looking back, it was a very interesting experience, man. So we play out.
I want to hover on that real quick. I want to hover on that because I think there's a nugget there. So you're saying cool. What about it is cool, like all the things that I just shared, but I think, and I believe that you and I are connected pretty well from a spiritual sense. Like you can't you can't create these experiences, right? You said a second ago, you're an experiential learner. So you're coming into this with your own personal walk with Christ, a lot of time in scripture, your own preconceived notions. And in a moment, you're entering a reality that you realize, like, this is a once in a lifetime experience. And I'm just available. Like, I've got plans, there's probably an itinerary, all type of stuff, but is a part of that cool, if I'm not mistaken, just your raw understanding that, like, wow, like I'm going to learn something I've never learned before.
I don't at the time yet, or currently, but at the time, because like I said, I was being tricked, discipled, right? Like,
sure.
The whole idea of like walking out my faith and being able to experience the Lord outside of a church setting, like these are all new concepts to me, right? Mm-hmm. So I just basically walk through that tunnel into the light, into the WWF WrestleMania cage and go, Lord, what are we doing? And I mean that in an exciting way, right? Because like, I'm hands open going, I have no idea what's about to happen. Right. Yeah. And man, over the next 4 or 5 days, talk about frustration set in greatly. And I look back on it now, and that frustration was a lack of understanding of culture, a lack of putting American culture and our ways of doing things on a pedestal. And just, it was a super humbling experience at the end of it. But during those first 4 or 5 days, it was a lot of frustration of going, you're broke, you're wrong. We should do this. This way's better. And really, I was saying my way's better. Our way's better. If you would just do it my way or the American way, we would be done. Right. And I'll never forget it, man.
Okay. Give me an example. Yeah.
Okay. So our first part of the trip, and given, this is me walking into the faith and really the mission world. And so because of these churches and post-earthquake, this was a construction style trip. And we're in the Delma area, and there's a church and school that basically lost their entire wall, had some serious structural issues with some stairs and the building themselves. And so, hey, can we get, as you know, in Haiti, let's get our wall back up, secure the school, secure the church, and do that. So we do that. And then I feel like we stared at a pile of blocks for 4 days. A pile of rebar showed up that was probably like a 4-ton bird's nest.
Yeah.
And it was just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Did we come here to work? Did we come here to work? And just setback after setback of like, hey, we've been here 4 days and we've built 10 or 20 feet, right? Having no disregard for any of the locals that we're working with, no disregard for how they do things, their hierarchy of boss structure, and everybody from the guy delivering sand to the guy delivering water to the truck driver, everybody gets a piece of the pie, right? Like, this is a community work opportunity. And we're just like, hey, guys, move out of the way. We're going to do this, right? So needless to say, I've repented quite a bit since that opportunity, but it's really cool to see how the Lord taught me through this first eye-opening experience. So towards the end of that week, the guy who actually texted me and said, hey, we're going to Haiti, pulls me inside and said, hey, man, I want to let you know that I'm not leaving, because our church in this group of churches, it's had basically scheduled back-to-back trips. And he said, hey, man, I want to let you know I'm going to stick around at least for another go-round. And I'm like, okay. He was like, I just felt like I was supposed to let you know. Earlier in the week, he and I had found ourselves standing on a street corner in the middle of Port-au-Prince, in the middle of chaos, trying to flag down somebody who we didn't know who we were looking for. Right? You get this, right? And there's just this sense of peace and a sense of belonging that is rarely, that I could rarely have felt before. Didn't make sense at the time. So when he tells me that he's going to stick around for another week, I'm like, you know what? Like, maybe I am too. Why not? So I grab my phone, my old BlackBerry at the time. That'll date me a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Crawl up
that the scrolling little pearl button.
the little pearl button. So hit that pearl button and find my wife's number and crawl up on this step overlooking Delma down towards like where the palace and everything would be. And hit my wife's number. And as soon as I hear her voice, man, like lose it, even choke up right now, just like thinking about that moment. And she's like, "Oh my, are you okay?" Like, I can't even communicate. And I'm just like, hold on. Like, I don't know what's going on. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Gather myself. And she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great." And I said, "I don't think I'm supposed to come home."
Yeah.
And she says, "Well, if the Lord wants you in Haiti, I'm not bringing you home."
Sure.
So again, step back. We had been tricked, discipled in our workout group, my wife and I both. So we're new to this whole walking out our faith thing, right? So for her to go, "Hey, you do what the Lord's calling you to do. This is not a conversation or a transaction for which we're normal to," right? She got a 4-year-old at home. We had just brought home our adopted baby girl who was sick at the time, and she's pregnant with our other wonder twin. And she's like, "No, if the Lord wants you there, you're staying." And man, that was the beginning of this journey, really.
Yeah.
So 1 week in Haiti turned into almost 3 weeks. And through that discipling journey with our pastor in that workout group, man, the Lord spoke really clearly and just said, "Hey, I brought you here for a reason." And spent the next 2 years, I say the Lord saved me from myself because I had that direction and that fire. I had to take a lot of frustrations of going, "Lord, you told me this. How come this isn't playing out?" Because again, I wanted to microwave it and jump in the next week. "Hey, come home, pack your bags, we're leaving." Yet the Lord still had a mighty and long work to do in me.
Yeah.
Right. So I go back and man, my life is flipped upside down. I'm like, this is what we're supposed to live for. I don't even know what this means, but this is what we're supposed to do.
I want to pause you in that timeline real quick. So we're going to pick up there, but because I got you in an emotional state, I didn't even have this as a question in my notes, but spiritually speaking, and I may be off on this because there's something about that first experience to Haiti that seems to leave something in some of us, many of us. I mean, I've had the privilege of leading people in different countries, different experiences. Haiti's rich in something. And the reason why I want to ask this question to you is because it doesn't take long after your excitement about Haiti stateside starts to become shared with others that have a lot of negative things to say about Haiti. There's a lot of Haiti haters out there. I remember being in Southeast Asia doing a mission conference there, and a bunch of salty old missionaries just laughing at me that I wanted to do anything in Haiti. Every now and then I'll still get messages sent to me of the billions and billions of dollars that have been spent on Haiti, and there's still been no physical change. These things that come later down the road, but you're sitting there, like you started off by saying it was a frustrating experience. You felt like physically you hadn't accomplished any of the work that you were set out to do. Yet in a moment's notice, you're brought to tears, recalling looking down Delma upon a palace on the phone with your wife, saying, "I think I need to stay longer." Where does that come from? And just speak into that, I guess, without giving you.
I mean, now it comes from the Lord. Like,
right.
I used to be the guy that said, "I don't even need a passport because I don't need to leave America because there's cool stuff to do here." No regard for
me too. 100%.
No regard for any developing country. No regard for those without food, shelter, water, basic necessities. Like, to be honest, I don't even know if those things existed.
Yeah.
And so, just in a moment, just like leaving the airport, that bright light and heat hits you. My experience just ended up being almost 3 weeks rather than that momentary moment leaving the airport. And so, a lot of people are, and I think the church has to be careful. A lot of people will leverage third world mission trip experiences to basically go, "Hey, let's use the poor to open the eyes of the rich." Right. And I think we have to be very, very careful in the church that that's done in a really healthy way. And not to say that I've got it figured out or anything. I'm just thankful that I had that experience and that it hit so deep and so to the core that like it changed who I am today.
Yeah. So since experiencing Haiti, I grew up I grew up physically poor in America. I would say probably, I mean, whatever. Everybody has their own story, but if we were in a wrestling match of who grew up more poor than another, like I was in the best of the poor economies. But it was something about Haiti that made me really start to not like that word, even like just the generalization of poor, like as an identity term. So you'll always hear me and my wife and people kind of around Upstream always saying the physically poor, if we have to give a definition, because there's something about my very first experience there. And I think it was really driven in like my first one left me really, really hungry, my first trip to Haiti, but a hunger that I couldn't satisfy back stateside. So I had to get back. So I became this guy that was back, I think every few months after my first trip. And it was this spiritual yearning for what later became jealousy would be the wrong word, an envy maybe, of a spiritual wealth.
Yeah,
that I saw in the brothers and sisters that we had in Haiti. Like when I started spending time with pastors or what I considered Christian community development type people, or even those who just had a heart for education, but also had a strong belief in God, there just was something there. Did you start seeing that right away in your first trips?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. I think that took a while, but I also didn't have the vocabulary to put to it.
Sure.
So like when they said, like we, in our Western mentality, poor is you don't have enough money in your bank account and you don't have a nice car. Right.
Yeah.
So using that definition, I did not grow up poor. Well, let my faith experience play out over the past, 15 years. I'm still poor today. I can pay my bills and I got an iPhone, but like I'm still lacking in things that the Lord has for me. Right.
Sure.
And so as I began to experience Haiti, Uganda, other places around the world, it has slowly chiseled away at that materialistic definition of poverty to really, in a really sweet way, open up other cultures and other demographics of people to crush some of those stereotypes, but also to build bridges and allow us to have connections with people that we would never think we would have connections to.
Sure. All right. So you go home after almost 3 weeks in Haiti. What is that like, describing an experience like that to your wife and kids? Or were you much like, maybe you weren't anything like me? Like I found myself trying, I think at first, and then it almost kind of pushed me to a weird silence because I realized so much of my experience was the experience, as emotionally attached to physical. It was very hard to describe because my family didn't really have a landing field for it. So what was that like? You returning home after 3 weeks, sharing with your wife and kids, or
come home and tell my wife and say, hey, we're moving to Haiti. And she's like,
did right off the bat. So that was you.
Yeah. I mean, and she's like, where, what, know, and imagine just the stress of a wife that is told that, yet she's not able to travel for a whole year. Like, so it was a whole year, play it forward, before she was able to experience what I believe that the Lord was calling us to. And so as I was saying earlier, man, like I'm new to walking out my faith. I'm not new to church and I'm not new to the Bible. I'm new to walking this out.
Yeah.
And so, man, I get back and this is the sense of humor of the Lord. I start volunteering in 4th and 5th grade Sunday school. To be honest with you, I hated it, but every week I'd show up. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And it was the Lord doing his work in me. Right. And play that out over months and months and months. And I joke, man, I say, this guy at church is like, hey man, let's grab some lunch. Cool. I thought it was a guy from church wanted to take me to lunch, basically to say thanks for showing up in 4th and 5th grade Sunday school week after week after week. Right. Even though, to be honest with you, I don't know why I was there or what I was doing.
Sure.
Play that out. We go to lunch. This is like an epic lunch. We're talking like 2 to 3 hour long lunch. I like long lunches, and it's a joke in our house that I take long lunches with people because I like to talk. But play this out. I get home and I say, hey, babe, I think I got offered a job. She says, what do you mean? I said, I think they offered me the youth pastor job. We had a multi-site church that we were going to. And she's like, you should probably call and get some clarity on that.
Yeah.
So I called the guy, and obviously there's, just some adrenaline and some of the things of your mind spinning, and you miss parts of the conversation. So I called dude. I'm like, hey man, like, what are we talking about here? Like, am I like in an interview pool of 10 people? And is this a hypothetical situation? What are we talking about? And he said, no, man, the job's yours. If you don't take it, we don't know what we're going to do.
Wow.
I'm like, oh man. Okay. I said, hey man, I got to take some time. I got to pray about this. He says, yeah, man, of course. So I hang up the phone. I go find my wife. I'm like, babe, they offered me the job. She's like, well, what'd you say? I said, well, that I have to take some time and pray about it. She said, babe, why did you tell them that? She was like, this is what we've been praying about. We've been saying, Lord, use us. I said, I don't know, babe. That's what church people say. I freaked out.
You gotta be churchy in this moment. Yeah, man.
Yeah. I just didn't know what to do, So we just took some time and we're like, okay, Lord, you called us to Haiti. And we know that's the end goal, but maybe we're not ready. So is this a step we're supposed to take in the meantime? And my pastor through that time, I told him, hey man, I'm going to Haiti. He said, no, you're not. Yeah. I'm not saying you're never going. You're just not going right now. Right. And I just remember the frustration I had with him to be like, what do you mean you can't tell me to go? Yet at the same time, he's offering me a youth pastor role to teach me tangible ministry skills to be played out later. Right.
Right on.
And
so how long do you spend in that role?
2 years. So two full school years. But it was a really sweet time because everyone knew that the end goal for me was Haiti. But to use that experience to grow, most of the kids at my campus were latchkey kids. I had some kids that they were 15 years old that had more tattoos than you and I. Yeah. And so it was a really interesting experience to be patient in the Lord. Yet at the time I was just frustrated in the Lord. Right. Yeah. And have all that play out. And over 2.5 years, when the time came and we believed it was time to make the step to Haiti, to go back to my pastor to go, hey, I think it's time. And he goes, yep, you're free to go. And to have it go, hey, it was a no before because it was, hey, the Lord has something else for you, to being released and blessed in that. Like, to look back now and see the blessing and the opportunity for which we had. Yeah. Yet in the moment, it was just frustration of like, why can't I just kick down these doors and do it myself? Right.
Yeah. So you go from your first trip. Do you go back in between this time and actually moving your family there?
Yeah. We probably had, I don't know, maybe 6 trips back and forth.
By yourself, or did your wife go with you?
She was able to go the next year. And really just that gave her the assurance of like, hey, if this is what the Lord has for us, I'm gonna trust me and the Lord that this is gonna play out. And so I had a group of guys, and man, we went from the northeast corner to the southwest corner, and just kind of meeting people and seeing what the Lord had, and really just figuring out where we were gonna settle.
Yeah. So what year was it that you between prayer and you guys are ready and you're ready to launch? What year is it that you're getting ready to move to Haiti?
We launch out in August of 2013. So take that from May. Yeah. So take that, eyes blown open in May of 2010. And then we launch out in August of 2013. So,
we'll call it a conception in 2010 and a birth in 2013. Mm-hmm. And that road looks long, right? And I'm kind of bringing this point up right now because I don't know who our listeners are, but one thing that gets to be hard is putting the brakes on guys like you, right? That experience a place one time and they're like, this is where I'm coming back. Having led hundreds of people now to Haiti, you'd be amazed at how many people that's their response.
Yeah, for sure.
And you never want, like, I would never speak against that. I would only encourage that, but also like, for those, like for me, it was, I was there a lot of time. I probably had dozens of trips there before we moved there. I think we moved in 2016 or so, so it was, for us, it was like a 6 year from concept. I would have been in the same boat as you, maybe not as bold about it. But by the time I was offered a position at a church, which was late 2010, I had already told them, I'm giving you 4 years. Like in those 4 years, I'm going to be working this thing that God has planted in me with Haiti and Upstream. And it kind of had its conception through that pastoring position. And then we didn't launch out full-time Upstream until 2014, 15. And then that following year, we ended up there. So walk me, like, just to brush over, you don't have to give me all the main details, but so that seed's planted in you in 2010, we'll call it the conception. Before it's birthed in 2013, you're actually packing the kids up and the wife, and you're making that flight there where you're like, we're not going back, at least not anytime soon. That was a test of patience, right? But like, what if you were to say to that person that was you 2010, having the wisdom of what it took to actually get there, what would you say to that person? What does that time look like?
I always joke, man. I literally say the Lord saved me from myself. I mean, if I could take you to show you some of these places there where I wanted to move my wife and 3 kids at the time, there just wasn't a lot of wisdom in that. Like, I was all heart and no brain.
So are you saying that at first you were looking for the Mud Hut Mountains? Like you're like, throw me into the deepest parts, the unreached people group of Haiti, you know?
Yeah, not that bad. Just in regards to just like
looking at crazier places like mine in City Soleil, where you're looking to go throw yourself a house at the back end of the airport and live it up in the slum, or what?
I mean, we literally went from one corner to the other. So it was just like,
so when you left, so when this was conceived in 2010, it's not like you had a partner necessarily that was kind of bringing you along the way. You just knew Haiti as a destination. And now, so you're at the point of trying to, for lack of better terms, hit your wagon to somebody that's got something going on and you want to come and just provide support. All right. So, go ahead.
So with that, just kind of our willingness to say yes and willing to make the leap. Had a group of friends that got together and said, "Hey, man, we've got this idea to do some education things like that. We'd like to launch this out. Would you partner with us to launch it out?" And so we said, yeah, because for us, it was that avenue to get to Haiti and get our feet wet and get to, work. And so, man, worked with that group of people, and still some of these people are some of our super good friends today. So off we go to Haiti with this grand idea. And if you remember when I spoke back to my first week in Haiti, the frustration of why aren't we doing it this way?
Mm-hmm.
Play that out 2 years forward, and guess what? I'm still stubbing my toe over the same issues, And so even though, me, my wife, this group of friends, we all had the best intentions and our desires and hearts were in the right place, because there was no cultural awareness and no understanding of the larger picture. It didn't work.
Yeah. So speak to that real quick. I know I'm giving you questions kind of all over the place, but sometimes your answers lead to a really good question in the middle of that point. You've said multiple times through this, learning culture, obviously inside of cultures, the history of the country, the people that you're dealing with, the why questions, like why are these people, why is this country, why are things being done this way? And with that comes a culture and a history and obviously language. You and I both have learned the importance of language. What do you, when you say that, what are you trying to make sure that our audience understands the importance of culture, the place that you're actually trying to serve in? Or we can be stubbing your toes over.
Well, I just think it's a reality of like, we can be so, we can just elevate ourselves within the Western culture.
I use the word arrogant. And I don't mean that in the worst form. I just mean, that's a great word. I can look at a problem and think I can solve it without having any context.
Yeah. That's a great word. So we were arrogant with a good heart. Right. And so just to be able to go in and thankfully to have 2 or 3 young Haitian men that said, "Hey, we want to try this." And why did they want to try it? Because they had an opportunity before them. Right. Yeah. And so we were able to kind of stub our toes together and eventually go, "Hey, you know what? This idea didn't work, but that doesn't mean that the Lord didn't plant us there for a reason." And we had basically about 6 months of learning culture the hard way. Sure. And I mean, that is, we drive to our house, and
which is where? What part of Haiti did you start off in?
In Tiguab. So
you're in Tiguab. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So a couple hours
down the peninsula a little bit.
Yeah. Headed out west. And so, man, wake up day one and go to the market Again, I don't speak language. I only have American dollars and try to feed my family like day one,
Yeah.
you know? And so,
Man, honey,
you know,
food's really expensive in Haiti. I think I spent $7 for this meal.
yeah, for a loaf of bread, right? Yeah. So, you know, I always joke, you know, I could write a book about the mission school of hard knocks on how not to do things, right?
Right. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. So, man, we just learned the hard way. But to be honest with you, man, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Right.
And so, man, just walked out a really, really difficult 6 months. Thought that we would be in Haiti for 5 years and nothing was going to change that. And we're 4 months in going, holy crap, what have we done? Our best friends came and visited us for Thanksgiving. And I'll never forget it, man. They brought us some things to, you know, make American Thanksgiving. And we make a massive spread. We had bought a turkey. And I mean like a live turkey with feathers that gobbled at you, you know?
Sure.
And he was our meal plan for Thanksgiving, only to come to find out our neighbors had some female turkeys and our flew the coop to find greener pastures and sweet ladies. So
right on.
So he was gone. And so, yeah, man, just had a Thanksgiving with our best friends and they look at us and go, what are y'all doing? Like, you guys you are not who you are. And you were in a really bad place. And we're going, we don't know. Like, I'm confident that the Lord told me I'm coming to Haiti. Yet I got a wife and 3 kids and we're drowning. So, man, we went some interesting family situations coming to Haiti. We were not, we did not ask for a blessing. We said, this is what the Lord has for us. So we, I don't want to say we severed relationships coming to Haiti, but it hurt. And we got in a situation where we had to really just look at ourselves and be like, hey, am I beating my head on the wall because I'm stubborn and prideful? Mm-hmm. Or is this what the Lord wants? At that time, and I was covered head to toe in this crazy rash. Like, you know, this was like before Zika and chikungunya.
Is that before dengue and all that? Yeah.
Yeah. This is just like, I'm not right.
Yeah.
And our friends had just left. Christmas is coming. I mean, the epitome of homesick is weighing down, right? And I'm like,
this is still in year 1, right? This is
6 months in. Yeah, this is 2013. This is 2013, man. And I got this rash, and I'm stubborn. We're gonna stay, and I'm gonna ride this out, and all this stuff. And my wife is just like, hey, like something's got to give, right? Sure. Like, what's up? So, man, we tuck our proverbial tails and call some family and just say, hey, we're in a really bad place. Like, will you fly us home? And this is someone who did not want anything to do with us being in Haiti. And we had to tuck our tails and ask for help. Right. Yeah. And we did it. And they said, we've been waiting for you to call. We want to see your faces. Please come home and visit. We hang up the phone. Okay, that was the right thing to do. Thank you, Lord. And wake up the next morning and my rash is gone.
Wow.
And so I don't want to over spiritualize things. I don't want to say there's, you know, a demon in every bush. But sometimes there is, but there's a connection between mind, body, and soul, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so as whether it was my stubbornness, my pride, my lack of wanting to take help, pick your poison. Yeah. That just allowing our guard to be set down and just say, you know, and really we went back and went, Lord, I'm really confident you called us to this place of Haiti, but if I missed the mark on that, like, would you use this little break to, if we got to tuck our tails and pack up bags and come home, we will, because we want to do what you have for us. But if we're supposed to be here, we need some traction. We need some clarity because we don't have direction at the moment. Yeah. And so just to have, I think it was that first step of humility to ask for help from someone who didn't want you there in the first place. Right.
Right. On. So
I think the Lord used that. It was just a month, man. And it was a really refining and clarifying month. Went back in 2014 and made a switch of organizations and group of people. and no hard feelings. And like I said, still friends today. Not to say that the transition wasn't difficult, but it needed to be done, and it was done. And then, man, that set us up for 3 solid years of continually growing in the Lord, meeting amazing people, and really digging into the community and the culture, and really growing our love for Haiti.
Yeah.
You know, in that 3 years.
No part of living abroad ever becomes easy. I don't know how to describe it. Lack of words, but the rhythm, like if the rhythm you're used to is America, you're never going to find that abroad. But like you said, you finally got to a place and you were able to thrive, survive, whatever, through those 3 years. At what point did, understanding the world around you, like embracing that culture, making some Haitian friends, what was your relationship like abroad? Did you find yourself spending more time with the Haitian community, or were you like some missionaries where most of their world is still trying to find those relationships amongst other expat missionaries, white people, whatever it is, and the Haitian is just where they work and serve?
No, man. When we were in Tiguab, we were one of the only blonde families. I think actually the only one. I don't remember really spending any time with other blondes or expats while in Tiguab. While we were in Grand Guave, we obviously worked with another American family. It's super, just grateful for them, just to like look back and be like, we could have not been more different, but to see how the Lord used different pieces of his body to serve his goal. But man, I'll never forget when we first moved to Tiguab, didn't know a soul. Talking about going to the grocery store, the market on our own.
Yeah.
And just to have a couple of people that the Lord put in our lives who, actually one of them still works for one of our organizations today, and super thankful for this woman that basically fed our family and kept us alive for 6 months. Super thankful for her, but I'll never forget it, man. One day I'm trying to burn our trash, and in America, we don't burn a lot of trash. And so doing this, and I'll never forget it, man. This old dude used to walk by every day. He would just walk by with his wheelbarrow. Not really sure what he was doing. Obviously had a drinking problem, but man, this guy became our garbage man.
Yeah.
And I end up spending most of my afternoons sitting on our front steps of our house talking to this guy. Right. Yet he didn't speak English and I didn't speak Creole.
Yeah. But you guys would figure it out.
We would just hang out or try to get somebody with intermediate language skills to sit in between us. And man, we would spend the afternoon just kind of hanging out. I probably had more fingers than this guy had teeth. And I'll never forget it, man. He said it. He said, if most people in the church would talk to me like you did, maybe I'd follow Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So you talk to a guy who culture pushes them out because of a drinking problem, of voodoo and other things for which he may or may not be involved in.
Sure.
But it was a time to see a person and not a project. And as you, a lot like me, we can get buried in projects. Yet the Lord placed us in a season where it was about the people.
Yeah.
And until we can get to a place in our lives where we put people before the projects, man, we're going to miss it every time.
No truer word spoken right there. Yeah, man. So for today's sake, we're going to try to brush over your trip experience. But as I'm getting all these nuggets, I'm taking notes. We're going to pull back some of these because this is my hopes when I think of you, Sean, and myself, is there's got to be a chunk of Upstream that does speak to the missional heart. And when I say missional heart, I've never been able to write my name. Like people ask me all the time, what do you do? I just stumble over putting a title on it. But there are those inside the body that all have gifts, right? And some of them are just a little more bent towards missional living or, the doing portion of the gospel. Some are more evangelistically bent, some are more prophetically bent, some are more prayer bent, some are more worship bent. I mean, we all know the gifts are dispersed. But I think that as we as we accumulate listeners, they're going to be bent towards this missional lifestyle, and I remember, as cheesy as it is, walking outside of the first church that I went to, it says, you're now entering the mission field, right? Like, it was Haiti that taught me, well, I shouldn't say taught me, it's just different in Haiti that, all right, so let me give context to this. I had never really experienced an altar call at our churches in Haiti. And for whatever reason, in a season, I felt like at the end of my messages, or at the end of Guy's messages, or one of our pastors' messages, that it was an appropriate message for an altar call. Well, I'd given my first altar call at a Haitian church, and some really bizarre things happened. And I won't speak to that a ton, but what I had realized is the church in Haiti, it's just kind of presupposed that everyone's saved. They're coming there, for spiritual nourishment. Outside of the churches where they're working, right, where the gospel's coming to life, where they're taking care of each other, and I mean, just the way, just sharing and a concern for each other, or knowing who amongst them in the community is the most in need, it's just different, right? Their communities are set up different than us. But I realized, in America, our churches have become very evangelistically driven, come as you are, seeker friendly. None of that is a negative thing, but meaning like we invite people in our world to church, hopefully for them to hear a message and evangelize that way. Where in Haiti, you're coming to church to be equipped as a saint, prepared, filled, nourished, in adoration, prayer, worship to the God that you're serving all week long. And then you're going out and doing evangelism work. Anyways, why I'm bringing all that up, I don't even remember why. But inside of that, as our listeners start to pick up that the commonality between two guys like you and I is this mission sense, you just hit a huge point, right? That there's this heart conversion that goes from doing to being. When I'd left Haiti this last year, one of the biggest things I struggled with was becoming. Like, my life, for whatever reason, was always motivated by becoming. It's always this next thing rather than just being. And like you said, with this man that you just spent time with, you couldn't even figure out necessarily how to communicate at first, but that time spent provoked a moment in you that was very raw, and, for those that experience God abroad like that, for me, it was Du Vincent, young boy that I spent a lot of time with, that asked me the hard question of, what did you do right and what did I do wrong for you to be born in America and for me to be born in Haiti? This idea that, wow, like, we're a little bit exposed as American church brothers and sisters. We're not hidden anymore, right? Like, with phones these days, even amongst the poorest of the poor, they get to see our lives. And depending on what they know about our culture and our life, it can look like we're just going on having a really, really grand time in our physically wealthy world and kind of forgetting about them. I remember one of my first trips to the market, I use this reference a lot, but picked up this little wooden bell. You ever see those? The wooden bells say in Creole, basically, nobody hears the sound of a wooden bell. Nobody hears the cries of the poor. And I was like, that's a trip, right? Because bells and sounds in Haiti are pretty common, for drawing people in, whether it be to buy their goods or shine their shoes. And I just thought, what a sad proverb or idea. And that became kind of my motivation in serving. But when you think about people that might have kind of a missional heart, whether it's a trip to Haiti, whether it's right in their own neighborhoods, like you were talking, my original, I used to be the guy that picked on people that did overseas missions for that very reason. I was like, don't we have enough problems of our own?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I've had to eat those words a lot. Now I'm like, no, like, we got to spread it up. What do you say? What do you say to that person that may be sitting back thinking, they got the 5-step plan on how to go missionalize, evangelize the world and reach the 1040 window and all that, having experienced it firsthand, the evolution of it? What would be some of your words of wisdom to those guys?
So the first thing I would say is you got to be before you do. you know, be
Right on.
before
I
you
love
do.
that.
And so, so much of our Western culture is bound to our identity of our social media, of our job title, of our, signature in our email, whatever it may be. And nothing could be more opposite in the eyes of the Lord, right? He's like, are you coming to my feet or not? Right? Just Mary and Martha, right? Like which of these is greater, right? And so, and again, this is me preaching to the choir. Like, I'm a doer. I want to be out doing things. Why? Because they show productivity, they show progress, and there's movement. And how often is the Lord just like, hey man, I'm right here. Like we can do later, but are you going to be with me? And so first and foremost, like, don't get me wrong. The idea of being a missionary is awesome, was awesome. And I wouldn't change any of those things for the world. But if that is my identity, I've missed it.
Right on.
So whether it's me wondering what the Lord has for me in this season and next, or if it's to a 22-year-old kid that says, hey man, I'm moving to China. Awesome. We need to check ourselves and go, hey, let's be before we do. And I think as we allow ourselves to grow in that being with the Lord, some of those steps will begin to take place. But I also think it's important, man, like what experiences are you having in your life that are opening your eyes and your mind to other opportunities?
Mm-hmm.
What are we saying yes to? So we have a saying in our house, and it's, Lord, the answer is yes. We just need the question.
I like that.
And so do we get it right all the time? Of course we don't. There's many opportunities that the Lord puts before us, and for whether it be fear or, thought of rejection or, oh, that's just too difficult to do that. And we say no, and we miss those opportunities. So it's hanging in my bathroom. I brush my teeth every morning and look at it. It says, Lord, the answer is yes. What's the question? And so what are those things in our life that we can say yes to? It's you calling me last week and say, hey man, you want to hop on the podcast with me? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to say yes until the Lord says otherwise, right? Yep. Especially in this time of COVID life, man. Like, we're in a global pandemic, even people are losing connection with their neighbors. I'm in an interesting situation. We moved to a new, we moved back home, yet we live on property. And so I live on 40 acres and I'm surrounded by homes outside of our property, but because we're disconnected by some major roads, we're very isolated. So for somebody that is an extrovert, a people person, hey man, I just want to sit on your porch and meet you kind of guy. Like, yeah. We're really isolated, man. So we're in the season of going, Lord, we're 12 months in and still trying to get traction of how do we go to church? Where do we go to church? Lord, who are our neighbors, right? Who are we serving? Who are we loving? And all wrapping that inside a global context or a global pandemic context, right? Yeah. So taking our own advice and our own questions of like, okay, Lord, what can we just say yes to? Like, I don't need to hop on a plane tomorrow and go to Haiti. Yeah. I don't need to plant a new church. I just need to be willing to say yes to something. Yeah, and so what are those small things that we can say yes to? What are those small changes we can make in our life to orient ourselves into the community for which the Lord has us in and leverage those opportunities?
I love that. Yeah, I love that. So we'll kind of, like I said, we've got a million places we can pick up from this. And like I said, you're going to be one of the guys that I call on often. So we'll chew on this story. Don't feel like when we get off here that there was things you wanted to say that weren't said. We'll come back to them. But one of the things I'd like to end on, since we're kind of hitting what to prepare for the missionary hearted type person, what is one of the areas that you didn't realize, or maybe you see this more so, you see it in yourself, but you also see it in other people that experience, because you said something, right? You said at 6 months, you almost were ready to turn in the towel. You were ready to throw in the towel. You weren't sure. Statistically speaking, a lot of people go through all of the effort and exercises to get abroad. And for some of them hit that 6 month and they do throw in the towel. And we can talk about that at a later date of what problems that can cause both in the return home and for the country that you left. And when I say throw in the towel, some people throw in the towel and don't stay committed even to the place they were serving. it's one thing to come home and still feel called to a place, but what is a deficiency that you saw in yourself, or that maybe you saw or you've seen in others that people could maybe exercise? And this is the answer that I have for this one is a tough one, because it's a challenge here, but there is at least some teaching, reading, and understanding of it that can prepare you for it. What was one of the areas that you guys felt most deficient once you got abroad? Like, so once you finally got there, you're like, wow, like this particular area is what's testing me the most. This is where I feel like I don't have the grit to get through.
I mean, I think our biggest issue, and the Lord revealed over the transition, was pride, right? So it was this willingness, or it was me fighting against the need to call and ask for help, right? And the Lord revealed, hey, like, are you going to be so prideful that there's people that want to love you through this opportunity? Are you really going to say no to it? Okay, check one, right? But then also the idea, I think a lot of people miss opportunities because of their pride. Because here's the example for us. So we go to Haiti with one organization with one idea. It doesn't work, but that doesn't mean that the Lord didn't use that experience to get us there.
Yeah, right on.
So had we been so prideful to go, this is what we came to do, we're going to do it, and we're just spinning our wheels in the mud, opposed to taking a break, taking a breather, and go like, Lord, if I missed it, I need you to tell me I missed it. But I don't think we did. Can I take a step back and be like, hey guys, like, I hope and pray that your mission and calling goes forth, but we believe the Lord used you guys and this experience and this opportunity for something else.
Sure.
Had we not been willing to take the what's next, we would have missed out on 3 years of
right on.
Amazing experience for what the Lord had for us. Had we not been willing to set down our pride and be like, man, we really missed the boat on that one, but we're thankful the Lord used that to get us here for what's next.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what came to mind.
Pride, and then just the ability to be flexible around it. Like you said, the pride in having your set expectation of what this should look like, and saying, okay, wow, okay, I look at it as a sermon I preached one time, as far as never forgetting who's in our boat, right? God said, we're going across the bay. He never said I wasn't going to lead you into a storm, right? So in that storm, are you still willing to trust that Jesus is in your boat with you, right? As it feels like it's all...
I preach one of the same messages, almost word for word.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, we'll let people tune into both of those messages to find out the details. But yeah, so for me, you get past all of the kind of American, like I remember just getting there and being so frustrated over the fact that I would have a to-do list that I just couldn't do because of the way Haiti was, right? Like, I need to go get a nut and bolt today at a hardware store. Well, that nut and bolt isn't there, and it takes 2 weeks to get. Like, when you get past all of that, when I think about what would have broken me, I mean, apart from God's grace and mercy, which is weird because it's something I thought I had in spades, and that was like a familiarity with suffering. See, I'd suffered a lot in my own personal life, and I had learned survival tactics to it. But it wasn't until God called me into the missional world that I realized how lonely that suffering could be. And what I mean by that is I didn't even know I had abandonment issues until I felt myself screaming as loud as I could on behalf of the people I was trying to serve, and not really getting much of a response back. It's like I started becoming acquainted in the suffering of the Haitian people that was mine and not even theirs. Like I was dealing with it in a very different way than they were dealing with it. So for me, when I met a guy one time who was living right inside Cité Soleil. He's actually from Switzerland, maybe, and he had gone through Heidi Baker's school of missionaries, and I don't know anything about Heidi Baker really, other than not necessarily where I get my teaching and training from. But I was asking him about his missional training experience, and he said it was all about suffering. And I think sometimes we forget, especially as American Christians, that we are, co-laborers, coexistence of Christ's suffering. And a part of serving the physically poor is to be acquainted with their suffering. So when I think of some of my mentors, I'm not of the Catholic denomination, but I love Mother Teresa and the Sisters of Charity's order and approach to serving the poor. And I think for people that are getting ready to step into overseas, third or fourth world, God may call you into many different areas. Maybe you have certain skills to accomplish some of the work that He's called you into. But for me personally, it was this understanding that Haiti's problems, some of the things that I thought were its problems, may never go away. And if my expectations are in fixing some of those problems, there's gonna be some suffering to come along with it, because there's never going to be enough money to fix the problem. There's never going to be somebody that's acquainted with the baby you're holding that's about to pass away, that's going to be able to fix that problem fast enough for you. And you're just going to do something with that suffering. You're either going to stuff it and hope that it doesn't emotionally affect you, or you're going to have a healthy way of processing through that. I would suggest the latter, of knowing that there's just going to be a certain level of suffering that comes along with serving abroad, and to have really healthy ways of dealing with that. Because in my toughness of surviving, I was a stuffer. And I didn't even realize towards the last of my days that I was just angry and upset with the church, so to speak, not the big church, but my churches, because I felt like they had abandoned me a little bit, right? Like, I've got all of this stuff to do, kind of the harvest is plentiful and the workers are few type moment. And as it peaked, right, Haiti for me had gotten to a place where I felt like I was acquainted with it. Well, then all of a sudden you get into civil unrest, and you start getting into looking at photographs where half of the people in the photograph aren't here anymore, because they've either been gunned down in violence that's normal in their community, or because all of a sudden inflation and a cost of meal has doubled, and they've now starved to death, or couldn't get to whatever the case is. That level of suffering can be extreme. So how somebody deals with that, I think, before they throw themselves into that, is just, first of all, being acquainted with the idea that Jesus hears all of these prayers, knows these people, knows all the hairs on their head as well. And, he grieves, he's sad about it, but not to the point where it affects them negatively, right? You persevere and you press on. I think that's why Jesus said, the poor will always be amongst us. That isn't to stop us from serving them, or to say, hey, we're not going to take care of the poor because the poor are just always going to be there. We serve them in spite of the hardship and the suffering, and you just can't. You can't save them all, as I think of the old starfish saying. You save the ones that you can put in your hands and you can do something about, but don't you grieve, but not grieve to the point of being unhealthy. Was probably what I would put as the number one thing that I did not prepare myself well enough for. And thankfully now with COVID and a year later, been able to get that back into balance and press on, continue to serve.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that, so I'd like to thank one of my tattoo artists for putting words to this idea.
Yeah.
But so tattooed on my chest is the word struggle well.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yes.
And so I think Haiti taught me what that means.
Yeah. You threw that in our Devo the other day.
Yeah. So it's just, there's a reality of like, man, life sucks sometimes. And we forget that here in our Western culture, because we walk down the sidewalk and you have a really nice house and your car looks really shiny and your refrigerator and pantry is full.
And the American dream is we can always make it better. We can always do, like, that's the hardest part about the blessing and the curse of living here, is even when it's bad, we live in America, we can always make it better.
Yeah. And so it's like, we can just keep burying the issues, right? Like, oh, my marriage is crumbling. I'm in debt up to my eyeballs and I'm addicted to porn.
Yeah. New pair of shoes will fix it.
Yeah. Like a new pair of sweet Jordans would be rad. Right. But the reality is, man, like when you walk down the dirt roads in Haiti and the street kids come up with no shoes on, like they're not hiding their brokenness. Right.
Right on.
We have to be really quick to check ourselves. It's not a matter of I have more money than him or not. It's he's embracing the suck and going like, the Lord has given me this day and it might be all I have. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a thing our family, another thing that we try to live by. Like, are we going to struggle well? Like you can read scripture and you can see Jesus, man, like the epitome of struggling well, right? Because his eyes are set on heavenly things. Right. So I think too often, man.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, man, too often, man, we pull our eyes and we get distracted. And because we are distracted, man, it affects how we struggle. Like, one, if we're struggling, we try to bury it rather than embrace it, because the idea of struggling means we're doing something wrong, opposed to going, you know what, life is a struggle. Does the Lord want to teach us something in and through this? Because he has something better for us on the other side. And better for us might not be a new house. Better for us might not be, oh, my marriage is going to be better tomorrow, right? Like, it's the willingness to walk through the mud because there's something better on the other side. And Haiti allowed me to see that a little bit more clear. Not to say that I understand it, not to say I do it better. It just helped to reveal a little bit of light, because the people in our lives to go like, man, they struggle a lot more than I do every day, but they get up and put on their shoes just like I do. And they seek the Lord and go, okay, today's going to be a tough one, but I'm going to put one foot in front of the other and keep going.
Well, the end of today's segment is going to be the beginning of our next one. And it's going to be right in that scene where you're talking about those street boys coming up with no shoes. I've said this many times to our visitors. When we think about our struggle in doing community well here, when we think about our struggle in doing discipleship well here in the States and stuff like that, I sometimes bring it back to the fact that just what you were saying. In Haiti, you can't hide your problems. If you have a home, you're separated from the next home by maybe some cinder blocks or maybe some sheets of tin. You know what's going on next door, and they know what's going on at your house. So when your eyes meet first thing in the morning, you guys are like, oh, tough day at home type of thing. The kids are coming to school. Everybody's hungry. You know what I mean? Like, their issues are worn on their sleeves. It's embraced as commonality, and then they work together through and out of it. As you said, here in the States, we do have the ability to hide a lot of that, and we don't need to, and we have permission not to, but it is a part of our culture that we deal with our issues behind closed doors, and we build facades around it, right? Like, I can think of how many times, you can flip that switch. You could be in the worst mood. Somebody walks in the door, you're in a better mood. You could be screaming on your way to church. You get to church, you can put on the face. We have that. And I'm not saying that's not common all around the world. I'm just saying we can build. I remember when I rolled up here to the suburbs that we're in here in Texas, because of places like Haiti, I just instantly am like, behind those doors, behind those brick walls are people, and people have issues. People have problems. It's not just about the car parked in the driveway. It's not about how green the grass is, how well they mow it. And we have permission, or at least we should anyways, through our community and relationship with God, to push past that facade and say, hey, I need to get to know you. I need to sit down with you like the wheelbarrow guy in Haiti and just get to know our neighbors and let them know that we are our greatest resource. And that's what Haiti taught me, that people are its greatest resource. When the island gets hot and scary, it was never guns or armored cars or stuff like that I felt protected. It was the people. The people were our greatest resource. How well did you know the people on every corner you were going to be driving up to? Were you good to them when you saw them earlier in that morning? Did you say good morning? Did you break off some bread to them if they asked? And are they going to help you get through this intersection? It's kind of my approach to life. But man, Sean, it was a blast talking with you. I got a funny feeling we're going to turn over a lot of stones and unearth some great nuggets here, man. I appreciate your time.
That was a good time, man.
Truly do. Anything you want to say as last words before we jump off here?
No, man, I just appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to say yes to whatever the Lord has.